Hello, Muscle Car Corner here with Arnie Beswick. I had a chance to meet him in 1968 at Tampa Dragway. I was a kid and my dad took me and I was standing beside his 68 funny car and he lit it up and I got my first taste of nitromethane. So I had a picture, a signed picture of Arnie's car on my wall ever since I was a kid. He's been one of my drag racing heroes in life. Him and Garlich and Mull Downey are my three favorites of all the old time. And it's such a pleasure to see Arnie here and still getting it done, man, at 94. Arnie, you're a hero of mine.
Thank you.
So glad to talk to you and see you here with this car here. And this car is one of your original Tameless Tiger 2. So tell me about your drag racing career. What got you into it?
Well, I've always been kind of a car nut and a tractor nut. I lived on a farm, and of course, anything you could do to the tractor to give it a little more horsepower was a big plus
Of course.
back then to get your field work done quicker. They didn't have the real high horsepower tractors. The tractor companies,
Yeah.
they were pretty easy going with what they put in them for horsepower. And so if you could get a little more horsepower to pull a bigger plow or a bigger field cultivator or whatever you was using back then, it was a plus. And so I kind of messed with the tractors in my very young age of 13, 14, 15, 16, in that era.
Nice.
Before I had a car to play with, I was
Yeah.
playing with tractor motors.
So
And,
what brought you to the first drag race?
I ended up ordering a 50 Oldsmobile because at that particular time in the car industry, that Oldsmobile was kind of one of the top performers.
Was it?
Yes, it was the first probably overhead valve
Okay.
type motor. At that time, of course, the Fords were pretty popular,
Yeah.
flathead Ford V8s, and they were, some of the speed companies, what was ever available in those days, were definitely playing for the Fords because they would respond so well to different camshafts and different
Gotcha.
cylinder head designs and higher compressions, and so the flathead Ford V8 was kind of the way to go for performance until this Oldsmobile come out with well, I guess it was a 303 cubic inch
303.
V8. It was bad at that time.
That's a 4-barrel motor right out of the gates.
No, it come with a 2-barrel.
They didn't offer a 4-barrel back then, did they?
No, not till a couple years went by. I think I don't know when the first 4-barrel showed up. Probably somewhere around
Mid-50s.
60. Yeah, right. Yep. So that was the first car that I took to an actual promoted drag race in Half Day, Illinois, and of course, luckily there wasn't anybody else out there with a 50 Oldsmobile, so I pretty much dominated the stock class they put me in.
Nice.
And so that really got my blood flowing to play with horsepower and play with something that was kind of dominant over the competition I was running against.
Well,
So shortly after I went to Half Day a few times, I got drafted into the Army. So I had to put my racing days on hold for a while because I got sent to Korea, and I was over there as a forward observer in a little sandbag bunker, which
well,
was,
thank you for your service for the country.
yeah,
Appreciate
it
that.
was kind of a dog's life
Yeah.
living in a sandbag bunker, and then whenever the enemy found you, why, you got bombed constantly. So yeah, then
You're lucky to be here.
you're right.
Well, let's fast forward just a little bit into the 70s. Your first funny car, what was the first funny car you had?
Well, my 64 GTO, because I raced against the 65 funny car, Mopars, Dodges, and Plymouth. I don't know if you're aware that GM officially got out of racing in 1963.
I did not know that. Yeah, that's right.
They got out of racing because supposedly they had over 56% of the automotive market, and the government was threatening them with some sort of a lawsuit because you're not supposed to be dominant in any kind of business. And they was dominant in the automobile business at that time. So rather than take Chevy or one of the other car companies out and put them on their own and not be associated with GM, they decided, well, we just won't promote our cars near as much as we have in the past. So they officially stopped making any kind of high horsepower motors and horsepower parts for their cars.
Okay.
So and then because of that, the people that was racing GM cars, Chevy, Pontiacs, Oldsmobiles, whatever they might be, because GM was not coming out with any special parts anymore, they all pretty much switched to Ford, and some of them switched to Chrysler. Because Ford, I don't know if you're familiar with the Thunderbolt that Ford come out with in 1964, but that was probably the top performer car of the era.
Oh, yeah.
And so a lot of the GM drivers went to the Ford Thunderbolts, and some of them that didn't go to the Ford went to Chrysler. So the drag
What were you in?
Me? I stayed with Pontiac.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I did. I stayed with Pontiac because my Pontiacs was pretty much equal in performance, or something quite often beat those cars I was racing against, which were Fords or Mopars. So when a GM car beat those Fords or Mercurys or Mopars, you was pretty popular.
Oh, heck yeah.
The drag strips were calling you because they had to have GM cars in their competition racing to get the GM lovers to come to the racetrack.
Gotcha.
If there was no
Win
GM,
on Sunday, sell on Monday.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. So I was getting calls like you cannot believe from different drag strips around.
Neat.
Because I had a competitive car that was most often whoever I run against, whether it was a Ford or whether it was a Mopar, I'd usually win. So I could have run 5 to 10 cars with all the calls I got back in that era.
Wow. What did you ever get any assistance from Pontiac directly?
Not really. I mean, I maybe got if they had a special cylinder head they was messing with, or a camshaft, something kind of cheap for them, but it might help me give me another 10 horsepower or something like that. So I did get a few, camshafts, valve springs. Sometimes maybe I might even got a special cylinder head when they come out with the Super Duty cylinder heads.
What year was that?
64. Well, 3. No. Actually, the Super Duty come out in early 62.
That's right, 62.
And then it got big time through the year of 62 and part of 63 until GM made all the divisions get out of racing. So Pontiac was kind of, from early 1960s through 63 and 64, Pontiac was pretty much dominant at the drag strips. There might be some people that watch this film you're putting together.
Say that Chrysler was the one.
Will dispute that story, but believe me, Pontiac, not because it was me driving it, anybody that knew anything about driving a race car and had a Pontiac with their good motors in it would win the race. They would win the race.
Yeah.
Pontiac was dominant from 1960 on through 1963.
What do you think about, what made Pontiac motors so dominant? The heads were a big deal, but was it the heads cam combination?
It was kind of the cylinder head combination,
That's what
the camshaft, the compression, and of course some of it was, don't forget, Pontiac probably, I'm not just sure whether they might have been the first car company to come out with aluminum front end parts. Well, that in itself made the car much better in balance for weight.
Yeah.
Put more on the rear wheels and so forth. And then with their equally probably stronger motor than some of the competitors at that time in GM. Now Chevy people are going to probably question that Pontiac was dominant in those years, but believe me, they were. Yeah, Chevy played around with some different cylinder heads and stuff. Even after they were supposed to be out of racing, they played around with some pretty good cylinder heads and so forth. So
it's amazing that Pontiac didn't get with you and use you as a test ground like Ford and Mopar did. They were big into the racing and they wanted to actually have like the Ram Charger team. They would go out there and test and tune and just get the best of the best eventually, and the Chrysler Pontiac should have done that with you, really, looking back at it. You could have been an unbelievable test field for their racing program.
Well, Pontiac didn't get in it because their hands was tied with the GM ban of racing.
Gotcha. I forgot that. Yeah.
That pretty much put them out of doing anything that the public would know about. Gotcha. Yeah, they might have did a few dumb little things under the table. An engineer might tell you this or tell you that, or say you ought to change this or you ought to change that, because he was kind of on top of it, when he was playing with it before they got out of the performance ban. And I'm not too sure, but what some of them didn't play around a little bit trying to get more performance.
Of course.
Even with the ban on, they couldn't advertise any big horsepower or anything like that, or any special cylinder heads or camshaft.
But you could still get them over the counter.
But under the table, they probably did play a little bit with that. Not just Pontiac, but Chevy.
Of course.
And Oldsmobile.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what? Let's switch gears real quick and let's take a look at this car here. And you tell me a little bit about this car. I've seen this run many times, but tell me about what this car is and what's in it.
Well, it's a 64. Started out as a 64 GTO. And through the years, I made a lot of changes on it, putting a fiberglass front end on it.
Gotcha.
And I took the stock frame out from underneath of it and put a tube frame.
Nice.
Which was quite a bit lighter and more designed to apply some of your horsepower to the rear wheels a little better.
Because it's more rigid.
Yeah. So I did a lot of changes on the car to make it so it would be competitive against the altered wheelbase Mopars and so forth. Now, of course, this kind of come into play long after the Mopars were released back in 65 and 66 and so forth. I didn't really do much with it, put this car together until the late 60s and
Oh, did you?
yeah, and 70s. I personally never really started on this car until the late 80s because I had a terrible fire back in there.
I remember that. You telling me that.
So that kind of put me out of racing for several years.
You're lucky to get out of there with your life with that one, huh?
Very true. Very
Wow.
true.
What's the quickest you've ever run ET-wise in the quarter mile, and then your top speed?
Well, the quickest is when I had my supercharged Boss Bird.
Yes, I remember that.
It was a supercharged Pontiac motor, and of course the Boss Bird was all fiberglass and another tube frame flip body, similar to today's funny cars, much lighter than a stock car like this, and that car was very, very, very popular with the GM crowd because it run good and won a lot of races with a Firebird body. Firebirds were very popular back in the 70s. 1970s is when I first put my first.
What was the quickest ET ran that car? Do you remember?
Yeah, well, most of the time with the Pontiac engine, with a supercharged motor, it would run pretty much in the low 7s.
Wow.
At 200 and some mile an hour,
Producing
220.
what kind of horsepower back then?
Well, probably I never had it on a dyno or anything of that nature, but it without a doubt, with the special fuels we run and everything, it was probably putting out anywhere from 22 to 2,500 horsepower.
Wow.
It was pretty peppy, pretty good ride.
I guess so. With that kind of horsepower,
Yep.
even though these are big cars, you know, like you had to take a lot of the weight off it. I see you have a lot of aluminum interior and complete aluminum floor and everything to lighten this car. You know, Lexan windows all the way around it. You know, I love the wing on this thing. It is just so cool looking. Did you come up with this design? Or is that something that the wing itself?
Yeah, that helps put a little more pressure on the rear of the car and puts more pressure on the rear wheels, so because spinning is a problem we have with the kind of horsepower we have in these motors. So the more pressure you can put on your rear wheels, the better grip you're going to get, the better ETs, and the better mile per hours.
Wow. Well, have you cranked this thing?
Have I what?
Will it crank?
No, it won't, because I loaned it out to a guy and let somebody else drive it.
Really?
Well, he wanted to outdo anything I ever did in the car, so he put a bunch of nitrous stuff like that to the motor and blew the motor.
Really?
I have not had the time or the money to really overhaul it yet, and repair it.
Gotcha. Well, when's the last time you ran this?
It's been about 2 years now.
About 2 years. That's in '92. You're behind the wheel of a 2,000 horsepower, you know, drag car. You're a man after my own heart.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank
you
you.
know what, Arnie? This is so cool for me. You being a hero of mine throughout my childhood. You know, I was drag car crazy. My dad took me to Gator Nationals every year, starting in '72, and you know, meeting you back in '68 was so cool. And for us to be sitting here talking in 2024 is just amazing to me.
Thank you.
So I'm going to keep you on my list as one of the coolest drag car racers ever.
Thank you.
And you're a legend to be reckoned with at your age. And I hope you keep on cranking it on.
I
You
do
know,
too.
Maybe I get a chance, I can come out to Iowa and take a look at your other cars, and we can do some videos on those. Do you have any of them that are running?
There you go.
Yeah. So
Yep.
we'll keep in touch. I'll get your number before I leave, and I'd like to keep in touch with you if possible.
Very
Man,
good.
I so appreciate this interview. And I hope everybody out there in Pontiac land was enjoying this one, because this is for y'all. He's a Pontiac legend and a legend, period. You know, living legend. So thank you again, my man. It's been great, and I look forward to hanging out with you a little longer this weekend. Maybe
Thank
I
you.
can buy you lunch or dinner.
Thank you.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.